Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm delighted today to be with Charlie Stewart. Charlie runs Rogerwilco, based down in South Africa. Hello, Charlie. How are you doing?
Hey, Paul. Great to chat.
Good. And I see the weather's looking good down there because we're heading into your summer, aren't we?
We are. I'd love to say it was a scorching 36 degrees. It isn't, but at least we got blue sky and the sun shining.
Hey, believe me, in the UK, we take that. That's, as you well know, any type of sunshine is good. Charlie, thanks for joining us. And I know you were actually in London fairly recently and met up with some of our colleagues and there's a whole sort of side history to stuff that we can talk about as well going on with Mission Made. But I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and start off with, so we can get to know you, and how your career started and how you ended up in South Africa.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you can probably figure from the accent, I'm not originally from South Africa. I grew up in the north of Scotland in the Highlands, and my career, I think, I sort of drifted through school, through university with no idea what I wanted to do. And when at university, one of my friends, who was a ferociously keen footballer, wanted to start writing about football for the student newspaper. So he bribed me to come along and vote for him in the annual newspaper elections. And unbeknownst to me, the little shit wrote my name down as on the ballot to be the religious affairs editor of the newspaper. Okay. And I was happily drinking the beer that he was providing when I heard my name being called out, and I had to, stand up and do a quick stump speech. And I was elected in, it was probably the most contested position on the newspaper, bizarrely, but I was elected in with a significant majority. And I think there began my love of writing, and my love of writing led me to start my career working in media relations and PR, initially in Scotland, then later in London. And about 20 years ago, my wife was, maybe it was a little bit more than 20 years ago, my wife was working for a big American utility company that went poof in one of the largest corporate scandals ever. And we took that as an opportunity to, revalue our lives. She was South African, had been brought up here. She was originally born in the UK as well, but had been brought up over here. And, I'd had a hankering to get out to South Africa. I just loved the country. I loved the people. I loved the entrepreneurial, never say no, never believe that anything is impossible attitude. And so we hopped on a plane, came over here. I had this naive idea that I would, use my experience to land a job in a big corporate, spend a year or so learning where the sharks swim, and then do my own thing. But it didn't work out that way. I think that as a man in any country, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find work. As a white man, it's even harder. As a foreign white man in a country that rightly is trying to, redress some of the past horrors that South Africa experienced, I discovered it was almost impossible to get a job. So that rather forced my hand. And I started the agency. It's the most extraordinary story. I was dropping my daughter off in a creche one day, and for the most part, it was just the mums who were dropping the kids off. But I'd seen this other bald guy taking his kid in there, and second time I saw him, we started talking, and he was a software engineer and had a whole bag of products that he'd developed, but he didn't have any idea how to package them or take them to market. So given that I had nothing else to do, I said I'd welcome the opportunity to take a look at what he was up to. And as I was sort of going through all of these different products that he developed, I spotted something called biometrics. And Mission Impossible had just come out. And remember, that was the one where Tom Cruise pulls his eye out. And yeah, and so I said to him, listen, let's do something with this biometric stuff. And I used my my media nous to get us on the front page of the business section of the Sunday Times, the South African Sunday Times. And the phone rang off the hook. Jake said, geez, we need to be business partners. And so we went into business together. We ran that business probably for about 3 years, but I had a hankering to get back into agency. I wasn't really enjoying building a brand. I mean, we built that into the biggest biometric brand in South Africa. And so in 2008, we made the call to set Rogerwilco up. We're 15 years old now, and it was, probably the best decision I've made in my life.
That's quite a story. Thanks for sharing that with us. But can you tell us just a little bit about Rogerwilco and what the agency does and the type of work you do and for whom?
Sure, we're a team of 75 people. We've got a small office in London with a couple of client service people down there. The bulk of the production team are in Cape Town and a few people in Joburg. We position ourselves as a digital CX agency. In effect, we're a digital marketing agency, but about 5-6 years ago, we started sensing that performance marketing needed to go beyond the sort of purchase phase of the traditional sales funnel, that there was so much more value to be had out of exploring how businesses could create locked in lifetime relationships with customers. So back then, 5 years ago, we produced what has become a benchmark annual study on the state of digital customer experience in South Africa. We interview over 2,000 consumers and supplement it with a lot of commentary from senior CMOs. And it really created, I think, a foundation for something that was very special. So, from a digital marketing perspective, we cover pretty much everything you'd expect to find in a digital agency, from creative, both conceptual and executional creative. There's a strong strategy overlay, really trying to understand, what motivates purchasing decisions. Then there's the performance marketing bit, which is really all about data science. It's about SEO. It's about paid media. Marketing technology, really figuring how do we get the right message in front of the right person at the right time. That in this day and age is all about split testing. It's all about running multiple experiments. We're even using more recently we've been using a predictive neuroscience AI product that helps us to determine whether creative is likely to land before we even flight it. So we've been able to improve the efficacy of our campaigns significantly doing that. And then all of that is underpinned by a very large development team. We've got a development team of about 25 people, which is around about a third of the business. And the joy of that, wearing a business owner hat, is that that work tends to be project based, whereas the marketing work tends to be retainer based. So we've been very fortunate in having I think an opportunity to maintain balance in the business. The projects themselves generally aren't enough to sustain the company, but when the projects are coupled to the retainer stuff that comes in, it makes for I think an incredibly resilient business, and resilience is something we've needed over the last year.
Yes, but we'll come to that. But I mean, of course, that area of project development and that type of work is where our conversation picked up. I mean, we've known each other for a year or two, but certainly it's where it's picked up with Mission Made, and we're putting together a partnership arrangement effectively with you and the guys at Made, where some of the work can be outsourced to you, especially in the Drupal space, where we need the additional resource. So that's the and you've got quite a large team in that respect, I understand.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's a team of about 25, all specialists in Drupal. Most of them are, Acquia certified, and they worked on some very, very sizable projects, from the local stock exchange to some of the largest universities in the country, to a lot of work for the United Nations, for the World Economic Forum, for the local arm of Vodafone, and so everything from I think very architecturally complex sites through to e-commerce, through to more brochureware type platforms where you're looking for an environment where you can generate leads.
Yeah. Okay. And I think we I mean, I've been to South Africa many, many times, and like you, I love the energy of the place. But I think from a sort of digital perspective, I mean, where do you think it sits at the moment with the rest of the world in terms of capabilities and where it's at?
My take is that it's up there with the best in the world. I think that we have an incredible tenacity down here in the people side of things, and I think that's really what makes digital. I over the years, we've seen AI, we've seen machine learning come through, and I have seen so many clients and spoken to so many organizations and individuals who believe that the silver bullet is just flicking the switch and allowing, Google or Amazon or Facebook or Meta or whoever to do all the work for you. And I think we've disproven that time and time and time again. That those machines, yes, they're calibrated to try to deliver great outcomes, but they will typically take the most expedient path to deliver an outcome, and often the outcome they're delivering is not an outcome you want. So we've got a really, really skilled workforce, and when I baseline them against agencies in the States or in Europe, it really does feel as though we are hitting at the same level.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, you mentioned that you've got offices in Cape Town and Joburg, and I know you've also got an office set up in the UK here as well, which is tremendously useful for us, of course. But when you're doing your work, is your client base mostly South African, or is it Southern African and up? Or where do you see the business coming from?
It's about 40% international and 60% local. Of that 40% international, about 90% comes out of Europe, 10% out of the States. Europe naturally for us is same time zone, very similar culture, and we are, by virtue of this, rand that we live with, we are incredibly cheap, and so we found that European organizations, European agencies are super keen to work with us. They're getting great product, and they're getting fantastic value for money. I mean, it really is a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, yes. I mean, I think it's if you can make it work, it is absolutely tremendous. And as I say, the talent that you have on tap is brilliant. And from our point of view, of course, the cost efficiency is great.
I mean, let me just caveat that. I mean, we're not cheap.
No, and we'd never suggest that as the case. No. You touched on this with the rand and a little bit earlier when you talked about the sort of having issues to deal with. I mean, South Africa has been through a lot, and every country has issues. We have issues here in the UK. But what are the main challenges that you think face an agency operating in South Africa today?
Gosh, it's an easy one to answer. It could be a very long answer. We're facing many headwinds. At one level, the failure of the state means that we don't have electricity, or our electricity supply is very sporadic. So we've all had to invest in alternative energy supplies. That has a big impact on the bottom line, which is unfortunate. There's also, and again, rightly, I think a strong imperative to encourage the hiring of historically disadvantaged people. The challenge that we've experienced with that is that people who've got good skill are in high demand, and so there's a lot of movement. Our response to that has really been to build out a very structured internship program. So we're taking in 10, 15 interns a year and growing them through the business, rather than hiring people into mid and senior roles. That we find works really, really well, because we're able to build a proper culture. We're able to find and engage individuals who want to support us, want to work with us. And it means that we've got a staff retention rate that I think is probably greater than most others in the industry. Beyond that, I think South Africa continues to be viewed as a bit of a pariah state. I mean, the government hasn't made life easy for us. The geopolitics around the Ukraine-Russia war have been pretty dismal. More lately, the geopolitics around the ANC government's seeming support for Hamas or for Palestine is odd. And my worry is that at some point the world is going to say, well, do we really want to engage with a country like South Africa? So that's probably the thing that keeps me awake most at night.
And am I right in thinking you have an election phase coming around? Is it next year?
Yeah, we've got an election next year, and I think it's inevitable that we'll end up with a coalition government, which on the one hand is good because it may mean that the ruling party, the ANC, who has led to such wanton destruction in this country, will be out of power. But we all know what coalitions do, which is not very much.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an interesting time. And as I say, I mean, I've been going to South Africa probably for 10, 15 years before I started this role. So I've watched the sort of changes in it, and a lot of the issues that are tried to address by various legislation perhaps goes a little too far one way and not far enough the other way. It's a tricky balancing act, and I think South Africa has been finding its way through that. But I hear what you're saying. So I mean, if we are looking forward, I mean, is there do you see a strong future in the creative industry in South Africa? I mean, there are a lot of agencies there, and a lot of agencies winning big awards at international shows like Cannes Lions. The talent is definitely there. Do you think there's an opportunity for it to grow and become something bigger, to take on some of the big nations in Europe, for example, at those shows?
I hope so. I mean, we certainly do punch above our weight in terms of the awards that are brought back to South Africa. It's a difficult one to answer. I mean, I think that over the last couple of years, really since lockdown, we've seen Europe, the States recognize that the skill is down here, and so an awful lot of talent has been recruited and has either moved or has been pulled out of South African businesses into international businesses. So that certainly, I think, is affecting the local agency landscape. But agencies here continue to win the big prizes. So I'm confident that the future, it may not be as bright as we would all want it to be, but the lights are on.
Good. Well, that's good. I wanted just to sort of finalise a little bit and come back to the point on AI, if you don't mind, because I've asked a couple of agency owners this, and I was fortunate enough to talk to Michael Farmer a few weeks back, and it's partly about his new book, but we were talking about AI, and he was saying that actually agencies really have not grasped this particular nettle very hard, insofar as what does AI do? Well, it does a lot of the repetitive tasks extremely well, and saves you a lot of money and much quicker. So from an agency's point of view, that could potentially wipe out an entire level of staffing within an agency. What's your perspective on AI? You mentioned that you're already using it, so it'll be interesting to hear from you.
Yeah, we're using it for the neuroscience stuff, trying to help guide us in terms of what's going to resonate. We're using it extensively for data analysis to try and find those nuggets. We are not using it for writing. We will never, ever, well, I mean, I should never say never, but certainly in its current form, we see no value in using it to replace copy jobs. Will it lead to widespread job losses? I don't think so. I mean, I think that the two areas that we're seeing huge opportunity with it in need jockeys to ride the AI. They need people to really understand data, and data, as we both know, has just grown horns over the last 5 or 6 years, and the number of data scientists working inside agencies and inside corporates has exploded. So I don't think that their jobs are under threat. I think the AI will be a catalyst to help them unearth insight and put that human layer, that understanding on top of the insight. In a country like South Africa, we've got an unemployment rate of about 35%. So there is a concern that widespread adoption of AI may lead to significant job losses. For my part, I think we'll likely see a bit of a backlash against those who are using it for for things like content. I've got a bit of a pet rant at the moment about personalization. I think personalization is increasingly being driven by AI. The email, dear Paul, the e-commerce recommendation engine. Yeah. When personalization first started, it was unique, it was distinct. You felt as though somebody was talking to you. Now that everybody's trying to personalize stuff, it's totally lost its mystique. And in fact, so many personalized communications appear to have been written by a bot, not by a human. And that's eroding my confidence and my belief in brands. And I'm sure I'm not alone. And so I think there will be a collective recognition in the coming years that there are some areas where AI can add significant value, and there are others where it's actually value destructive.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I suppose it's slightly analogous to sort of when you receive a letter in the post these days, and it's like, well, I'm actually going to open that because it's something interesting and new, and it's not popped up in my phone as an email. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Well, in South Africa, I think we're lucky if we get a letter, once a year. I received a Christmas card last year that had been posted to me in 2021.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm never going to moan about the post in the UK again then. Okay. Charlie, hey, listen, this has been great talking to you, and we are almost out of time, but I wanted to thank you firstly for your time today, but also we're really looking forward to working with you guys, and I know the team at Made are as well. If any of the mission agencies watching this video up on the YouTube channel want to reach out to learn more about Rogerwilco and how they might work with you, what's the best way to do? Do they come directly to you? We can put your name up at the end, but I know you've also got this team over in the UK. Should it funnel through them?
Probably best direct to me to begin with, just so I can figure how the relationships sit. But then, yes, then I'll pass on to the team in the UK. No, I think that the purpose of the team in the UK is really to enable us to have face-to-face contact. We know how important that is in this day and age. So me first, then them.
Perfect. Hey, Charlie, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I'm hoping to get down to South Africa at some point because I need some sunshine. We're heading into the winter here, and I'm going to sort of sit here in front of one of these bright lights and things and try and make myself feel good. But that's not the same.
Well, I'm looking forward to having a frosty glass of wine with you, Paul.
Oh, now there's an offer. Charlie, thanks very much. Take care now.